Hi, my name's John Wilsden, International Artistic Director for Tony & Guy and Label M, and we're here in the studio filming our brand new collection, The Legacy. It's inspired ultimately by Tony Mascolo, the founder of the company, who changed the face of hairdressing. The editorial technique that I'm working on is a progression from last year where we was using accessories, and this year we're incorporating materials. My technique is interweaving, where we're working with a basket weaving technique, incorporating rope inspired by the House of Holland show. We're working a basket weave through the centre of the head and then two just running through the sides, pivoting those sections in behind the ear and finishing round about the occipital bone. So the technique is nice and head hugging and then incorporating the texture through the mid-lengths and ends. Now let's have a look at the step-by-step.
To begin, the hair is prepped on dry hair using the Label M volume mousse. The product is worked through the roots using the Label M grooming brush and dryer, controlling the direction of the hair by blow drying towards the nape. It's the preparation of the technique that's the most important element here, as it's these layers of product that will allow the hair to be manipulated like a fabric. C curvature sections are taken from the recession, just above the curvature of the head, about 1.5 inches wide. This placement is important to ensure that the shape has a square outline. The sections should be even on both sides. The placement of the isolated C-curve sections is key to getting the square and head-hugging shape that makes this look contemporary. The technique is started by placing the hair within the C-sections into ponytails. This is to create a space between the woven panels. It's important to keep the sections clean and tight and to keep the ponytails as flat as possible. Approximately 3 ponytails on each side is all that's needed. In order to secure the ponytails tightly and in the correct position, it's helpful to work with a member of your team that can secure the ponytail whilst you hold it in place. Moving on to the top, firstly he isolates a section at the hairline which will later on be used to create a fringe movement. The Label M Miracle fibre is applied to the root and then combed through to the tips of the hair, starting from the nape and working to the top. This is going to give maximum control and shine within the whole of this central section. The same product application is repeated through the side areas and the hair is clipped away. Behind the isolated fringe area, a small section is taken. The hair is held with tension. Using a metal pintail comb, evenly sized pieces of hair are woven. The top woven section is lifted and the hair that's left out is combed flat to the head, joining the rest of the hair. Rope is then placed directly on top of the hair, as close to the roots as possible from one side of the section to the other. The top section is then lowered over the rope and combed in the direction of the hair to keep the tension tight and clean. The weaving technique is then repeated, but this time he weaves in between the previous weaves in a brick formation. It's this alternation that creates the basket weave effect. The top part of the section is then lifted and the underneath is combed for tension, and the rope then follows at the roots in the opposite direction to the previous placement, so the rope will be S-bending throughout. Leave enough rope on the outside of each section to create detail. Here it's important to remember that the smaller the sections you take, the more detail you'll see. The rope is held into place on either side using sectioning clips. The weaving technique is then repeated, but this time he weaves in between the previous weaves in a brick formation. The weaving technique combined with the rope gives an expensive finish that reflects the material we've been seeing used within editorial hair at Fashion Week shows. This method is repeated down to the occipital bone. Using materials like rope is an editorial progression from last year, where accessories were heavily used within our collection. This technique creates a head-hugging shape. At the nape area, the same method is continued, but he replaces the rope with a small amount of the model's own hair. Tension and consistency are key in executing a detailed weave. Finishing the weave at the nape area helps to create the head-hugging shape, which is contrasted with the volume and texture created by dressing out the perimeter later on. The woven out hair is gripped to hold into place. The same technique is repeated on the side section. In this area, a small section of hair is taken and the hair is woven evenly. The piece of rope is then placed underneath the woven hair and the hair is combed flat over the top of the rope. The weaving technique is then repeated, but this time he weaves in between the previous weaves in a brick formation. Using the tip of the pintail comb, make circular motions to pick up and push down sections of hair, which will create the woven technique. As he approaches the ear, you can see it's important to make sure that the sections are pivoted around in order to complement the head shape and the hairline. Mapping out the sectioning pattern is a key part of the technique. You can vary the sections and place them slightly differently around the head shape to create versatility and individuality to each look. Using rope over other materials means that the structure is strong, but it can still be positioned to create slightly more three-dimensional shapes if adjusted. At the hairline, leave out a section of hair that will be detailed later on with movement. It's important that the miracle fibre is used only within the actual weaving technique. The hair that's left out needs to have a dry texture to it. On the opposite side, the same technique is repeated from the top of the section, pivoting around the ear until the nape is reached. This completes the 3 interweaving sections. With the hair that has been left out at the hairline and below the occipital, sections are taken. Label M hairspray is sprayed onto the hair that's been left out through the perimeter. Then he's working with the new Label M 4D Infinity Waver to create a soft movement. Sections are taken and the hair is wrapped loosely around the barrel. Ultimately, hair is a fabric, so it's important to be able to control it and manipulate it. Once all of the hair has been tongued, he works with the Label M texturizing volume spray into the hair and visually manipulates the shape with his fingers. The key here is to keep the finished texture subtle. This is the completed interweaving technique for the Legacy collection. The iconic Toni and Guy veil image is the inspiration behind the interweaving technique. It incorporates rope material as seen on the runway for House of Holland to introduce a contemporary feeling to a vintage weaving technique.